I bought this one on a hunch, because it kind of looked like someone left town quickly. So I'm hoping it may have left some good stuff behind. Wow, there's a lot of stuff here.
When Barry Weiss first appeared on Storage Wars in 2010, viewers immediately sensed he was unlike anyone else on the auction floor. While Dave Hester shouted his infamous "YUUUP" and Darrell Sheets hunted relentlessly for items to flip for profit, Barry seemed to be there purely for the thrill of the hunt. But what audiences didn't realize in those early seasons was that Barry Weiss wasn't just another eccentric bidder chasing entertainment.
My taste for collecting cars and motorcycles is really all over the board. I mean, from Harley Davidsons to British Triumphs and BSAs and Nortons. But I mean, I don't really care. I mean, if it's made in Bangladesh, as long as it's cool.
So why was he really on the show? And what secret life had he managed to keep hidden for decades? Join us as we uncover how Barry Weiss quietly lived a double life for over 30 years.
Oh, look at this car.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Is that?
It's the Batmobile. Is that Barry? No way.
No, it's not. No.
That's fake Barry.
You haven't seen this one yet.
The life before Storage Wars. Long before Barry Weiss became known as the collector on Storage Wars, he was a successful businessman who had spent 25 years building and running a produce import-export company. This wasn't some small family farm stand or local grocery supplier. It was a substantial business operation that engaged in international trade in fruits and vegetables, requiring knowledge of agriculture, global markets, logistics, regulations, and business management. The company had actually been started by Barry's grandfather decades earlier, and Barry, along with his brother Joey, eventually took over operations and expanded the business significantly. Barry and his brother were apparently very good at this complicated business. Over their 25 years of operation, they built the company into a successful enterprise that generated substantial wealth for both of them. By the time Barry was in his 50s, he had accumulated enough wealth that he never needed to work another day in his life, if he chose not to. The produce business also explains several aspects of Barry's personality that would later translate well to television. Running an import-export operation requires effective negotiation, often with people from different cultures who speak different languages. Barry's relaxed approach to auctions wasn't just a television persona. It was the negotiating style of someone who had spent decades making deals and understood that being likable and unpredictable could be just as effective as being aggressive or calculating. The financial security from the produce business also meant that when Barry eventually appeared on Storage Wars, he genuinely didn't need the money. This fundamental fact separated him from nearly every other cast member on the show. Dave Hester, Darrell Sheets, Jared Schultz, Brandy Passante, and the other regular bidders were all in the storage auction business because it was their livelihood. They needed to find valuable items and resell them for profit, because that's how they paid their bills. Barry was there because he found it interesting and entertaining. He could afford to bid on units just because they seemed weird or intriguing, even if there was no clear profit potential. This freedom from financial pressure made him the most authentic personality on a show full of people who were performing for the cameras while also desperately trying to make their businesses work. When Barry and his brother eventually sold their produce company after 25 years of operation, Barry found himself in an unusual position. He was financially secure, relatively young and healthy, and completely uninterested in traditional retirement. He had spent his entire adult life working, dealing with the stresses and demands of running a business. And now, suddenly, he had unlimited free time and resources, but no clear direction for what to do with them. But how did a wealthy, retired produce businessman end up becoming one of reality TV's most beloved personalities. And what made him so different from everyone else on Storage Wars? From collector to television personality, Barry had always been a collector, even during his years running the produce business. His interests were eclectic and wide-ranging. He collected vintage cars and motorcycles, acquiring an impressive collection of rare and unusual vehicles. He collected antique toys, quirky memorabilia, unusual artifacts, and basically anything that caught his eye and seemed interesting. His home and garage were filled with the accumulated treasures of decades of collecting. After selling the produce business, Barry began attending storage auctions in Southern California. He wasn't doing this as a business venture or as a way to become a professional storage unit buyer. He was doing it because it was interesting, because it fed his collecting habit, and because it got him out of the house and around other people. Storage auctions appealed to his gambling instinct and his collector mentality. You never knew what might be hidden in a storage unit until you bought it and sorted through the contents. For someone like Barry, who enjoyed the hunt as much as the acquisition, storage auctions were the perfect form of entertainment. It was at these auctions that Barry crossed paths with other regular buyers who would eventually become his Storage Wars castmates. He met Dave Hester, Darrell Sheets, and the others who made their living buying and reselling storage unit contents. They noticed this older guy who showed up in vintage vehicles, made jokes during auctions, and seemed to bid on units for reasons that made no economic sense. Barry stood out because he clearly wasn't doing this for money. He was there for fun, and that made him memorable. When the producers of Storage Wars were casting their show in 2010, they wanted a variety of personalities and approaches to storage auctions. They had the aggressive bidder, Dave Hester, the treasure hunter, Darrell Sheets, and the young couple trying to build a business, Jared and Brandy. But they also wanted someone who represented pure entertainment value, someone who could provide comic relief and unpredictability. Barry Weiss was perfect for that role. He had a natural camera presence, he was genuinely funny without trying too hard, and his approach to auctions was so different from everyone else's that it created built-in conflict and variety. Barry agreed to appear on Storage Wars for the first 4 seasons, from 2010 through 2013. During those seasons, he became arguably the most popular cast member on the show. Viewers loved his quirky personality, his vintage vehicles, his obscure references, and his clear lack of concern about whether any particular storage unit turned a profit. While other cast members were stressing about finding valuable items and making their money back, Barry would bid on a unit because it looked interesting or because nobody else wanted it. Then he would bring in unusual experts to evaluate items, make jokes about the contents, and generally treat the whole thing as entertainment rather than business. His popularity led to 2 spin-off shows that focused exclusively on him. Buried Treasure aired in 2014, following Barry as he traveled across the country in search of interesting collectibles and artifacts. Storage Wars, Barry Strikes Back, premiered later, featuring Barry providing commentary on old Storage Wars episodes. These spin-offs proved that Barry had enough personality and fan appeal to carry shows on his own without the ensemble cast of the original Storage Wars. But they also revealed something important. Barry wasn't particularly interested in being a full-time television personality. He had agreed to do Storage Wars because it was fun and different. But he had no desire to make entertainment his new career. While Barry's on-screen persona seemed like an open book, his personal life remained shrouded in mystery. What was the eccentric collector hiding from the cameras, and why did he guard his privacy so fiercely? The mystery of Barry's personal life. One aspect of Barry Weiss that has always intrigued fans is how little anyone knows about his personal life beyond what appeared on television. Most reality show personalities eagerly share details about their families, relationships, and private lives, understanding that personal drama attracts viewers and keeps them relevant. Barry took exactly the opposite approach. He maintained strict privacy about his personal life, rarely discussing his family, his past, or his relationships. This wasn't because he had anything to hide. It was because he valued his privacy and understood that reality television fame was temporary and potentially destructive if allowed to consume his entire identity. What is known about Barry's personal life can be summarized briefly. He was married earlier in his life, but went through a divorce approximately 30 years ago. That marriage produced 2 children, though Barry has never discussed them publicly or allowed them to appear on his television shows. After his divorce, Barry decided to remain single. This wasn't because he was bitter about his divorce or opposed to relationships in general. It was simply that he valued his independence and freedom more than he valued having a romantic partner. He has stated in interviews that he enjoys being single, that it suits his personality and lifestyle, and that he has no interest in getting married again or even being in a committed relationship. The fact that Barry kept his children and ex-wife completely out of the public eye during his time on Storage Wars also speaks to his values and priorities. Many reality show participants drag their families into the spotlight, willing to sacrifice their privacy for additional screen time and storylines. Barry refused to do this. His television persona was separate from his family life, and he consistently maintained that boundary. This protected his children from the scrutiny and potential harassment that comes with reality television fame, and it allowed them to live normal lives despite having a father who was temporarily famous. Barry's brother Joey, who had been his partner in the produce business, also remained largely invisible during Barry's television years. There were occasional mentions of Joey in interviews, but he never appeared on camera, and Barry never exploited their relationship for television content. This suggests that the Weiss family as a whole valued privacy, and that Barry's decision to maintain boundaries wasn't just personal preference, but reflected family values that predated his television fame. Barry's carefully constructed private life allowed him to enjoy his retirement in peace, but one terrifying moment in 2019 would force him to confront mortality in the most brutal way possible. What happened on that fateful day that nearly ended everything? The near-fatal motorcycle accident. In April 2019, Barry Weiss experienced an event that would fundamentally change his life and perspective. He was involved in a serious motorcycle accident in Los Angeles that left him with significant injuries and could easily have killed him. Barry had been riding motorcycles for decades and had an extensive collection of vintage bikes. Riding was one of his passions, something he genuinely loved and had done safely for years. But on this particular day, another vehicle struck his motorcycle, sending Barry crashing to the pavement with devastating force. The injuries Barry sustained were severe and life-threatening. He suffered a broken back, which is one of the most serious types of injuries a person can experience. The spine protects the spinal cord, which controls virtually all bodily functions below the point of injury. A broken back can result in paralysis, permanent disability, chronic pain, and numerous complications that affect quality of life for years or forever. Barry also suffered broken bones in other parts of his body and significant soft tissue damage from the impact and the fall. Barry was rushed to the hospital, where doctors worked to stabilize his condition and assess the full extent of his injuries. The broken back required immediate attention and would determine whether Barry would walk again and what level of function he might eventually recover. This wasn't a situation where someone got injured, spent a few days in the hospital, and then went home to rest. This was a catastrophic injury that required extensive medical intervention, surgery, and a long, painful recovery process with no guarantee of what the final outcome would be. His friend and fellow Storage Wars cast member Jared Schultz visited Barry in the hospital and later described his condition to media outlets. Jared reported that Barry looked pretty rough, which was apparently an understatement. Barry had been through major trauma and major surgery. He was dealing with severe pain, facing months of recovery, and confronting the possibility that he might never fully recover the mobility and independence he had enjoyed before the accident. For someone as active and independent as Barry, who valued his freedom and his ability to pursue his hobbies and interests, this prospect was devastating. Barry spent approximately 2 months in the hospital and rehabilitation facilities, undergoing surgeries, beginning physical therapy, and slowly working toward recovery. Those 2 months were probably the most difficult of his life. He was in his 70s at the time of the accident, and older bodies don't heal as quickly or as completely as younger ones. Every day required fighting through pain to do exercises and movements that would help rebuild his strength and mobility. There were probably dark moments when he wondered if he would ever be himself again, if he would ever ride a motorcycle again, if he would ever have the kind of active, independent life he had built for himself. After months in the hospital facing an uncertain future, Barry faced the most grueling challenge of his life. Would he ever walk again? And what would this devastating injury mean for the independent lifestyle he had always cherished? The long road to recovery. After Barry was released from the hospital, he faced months of continued recovery and rehabilitation at home. The broken back had been stabilized and surgically repaired, but healing from that kind of injury is a long, slow process. The bones need time to knit back together. The surrounding soft tissues need to heal. The muscles that were damaged or weakened during the period of immobility need to be gradually rebuilt. And throughout this entire process, there's pain that must be managed while still pushing yourself to do the exercises and movements necessary for recovery. Physical therapy became the central focus of Barry's life during this recovery period. He worked with therapists who specialized in spinal injuries and who understood the specific challenges he was facing. The therapy wasn't gentle stretching and easy exercises. It was difficult, painful work that required pushing through discomfort to regain function. Some days probably felt like he was making progress. Other days probably felt like he was going backward or not improving at all. This is the reality of recovering from serious injuries, especially in older adults. It's not a smooth, linear progression, but a difficult journey with setbacks and frustrations along the way. Beyond the physical challenges, Barry also had to deal with the psychological and emotional impact of the accident and recovery. Depression and anxiety are common among people recovering from serious injuries, especially those involving potential permanent disability. Barry had to maintain hope and motivation during a period when his body was broken, his pain was constant, and his future was uncertain. What helped Barry through this difficult period was probably several factors. First, he had financial resources that allowed him to access the best medical care and rehabilitation services without worrying about cost. Second, he apparently had supportive friends and family who helped him through the recovery process, even though he had kept those relationships private. Third, he had a strong personality and independent nature that probably made him determined to recover as much function as possible rather than accepting a diminished quality of life. Gradually, over many months, Barry did improve. He regained enough function to eventually return to some of his normal activities, though probably with more caution and awareness of his vulnerability than he had before. The recovery was successful enough that Barry was able to return to public life and even to television, though the experience had clearly changed him in ways both visible and invisible. Having survived a brush with death and fought his way back to health, Barry faced a decision about his future with Storage Wars. Would he return to the show that made him famous? And if so, What would that comeback look like for a man who had been fundamentally changed by trauma? The returns and departures from Storage Wars. Barry Weiss's relationship with Storage Wars over the years has been complicated and somewhat mysterious to fans who wonder why he keeps leaving and occasionally returning. After appearing in the first 4 seasons from 2010 to 2013, Barry left to pursue his spin-off shows and to live his life away from the constant demands of television production. He seemed content to be done with Storage Wars, having gotten what he wanted from the experience without needing to make it a permanent career. However, in November 2021, A&E announced that Barry would be returning to Storage Wars for seasons 14 and 15. This was several years after his motorcycle accident, and after a long absence from the show that had made him famous. Fans were excited to see Barry back, though many noticed that he seemed different. He appeared older, which was natural given the passage of time and the trauma of his injuries. He seemed perhaps a bit more subdued than in his earlier seasons, though his fundamental personality remained intact. Barry's return to Storage Wars for these 2 seasons suggested several possible motivations. Perhaps he missed the camaraderie and entertainment of the show after years away. Perhaps he needed something to occupy his time and provide structure to his days after recovering from the accident. Perhaps the producers offered him terms that were attractive enough to bring him back for a limited engagement. Or perhaps, having faced death and recovered, Barry wanted to prove to himself and others that he was still capable of doing the things he enjoyed, including appearing on television. Whatever his reasons for returning, Barry appeared in seasons 14 and 15, giving fans the chance to see him back in action. But then, when season 16 premiered, Barry was absent again. There was no announcement about his departure, no farewell episode, no explanation for why he wasn't part of the cast. He simply wasn't there, leaving fans once again wondering what had happened and whether they would ever see him on Storage Wars again. What is Barry Weiss up to these days, and has he addressed the possibility of coming back to Storage Wars? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.